Our story begins at the 4th Academy of Suzidi, where the students are about to receive their professions from the system, which will serve as the path for them to become full-fledged players of the inner world. Their profession awakening was overseen by their head teacher, Zhu Jinlong, who would guide them until everyone had received their respective professions. Zhu Jinlong explained that they would not be the ones to choose their profession, it would all depend on fate. They might become powerful swordsmen, sturdy knights, swift assassins, or mighty mages. However, no matter what profession they received, Zhu Jinlong believed that they could all become strong in their own paths. Without further delay, Zhu Jinlong instructed everyone to step into the transfer formation, which he then activated to begin the process of profession awakening. The protagonist of our story is named Xiao Yu, and this was the day he had long awaited for 18 years since he reincarnated into this world. Xiao Yu came from the planet Earth and ended up in his current world, known as the planet Kuji, which was very much like Earth. While Kuji may resemble Earth, it has one major difference. Dungeons have appeared all across the world. On this planet, people gain powers when they turn 18 through the awakening of their profession, which they can use to battle the monsters within the dungeons. People of Kuji grow stronger by slaying monsters in the dungeons because each kill grants them experience, levels, and attribute points that increase their power. After a few moments, Xiao Yu entered the inner world, where the system would grant him his profession. The system greeted Xiao Yu, as it was his first time entering the inner world, and asked if he was ready to receive his destined profession. Xiao Yu responded affirmatively, silently praying to his aunt's stores to guide him in receiving a good profession. The system began processing Xiao Yu's profession, and after a short while, a large skull appeared above him, and his body was enveloped in a green aura. Soon, a notification sounded, announcing that he had received his profession and congratulated him for obtaining a hidden class necromancer, one of the rarest in the world. Xiao Yu was overjoyed, as the necromancer profession was incredibly rare, with only 1 or 2 known in the entire world. Furthermore, necromancers were extremely powerful. Just a wave of their staff could summon countless undead creatures from the gates of death, and they could do so repeatedly as long as they had mana. Because of this, the profession was feared by all. In short, Xiao Yu had received a profession far more powerful than the common ones. Excited, he opened his status window to check his attributes. But to his shock, his spirit power stat essential for necromancers was at 0. Xiao Yu's world crumbled at that moment. As a necromancer, this was the worst thing that could happen. Even having just 5 points in spirit power was considered terrible for a necromancer, but to have 0 was utterly tragic. While Xiao Yu was mourning his fate, the system suddenly asked if he was ready to receive his talent. Xiao Yu agreed, thinking it no longer mattered. To him, even if he received an S-rank talent, it would be useless if his spirit power remained at 0. The system began analyzing his talent, which could range from F the lowest to S the highest. After a while, a spectrum of colors surrounded Xiao Yu's body, signaling that he had received his talent. To his great surprise, he was granted the talent of the Brave Magician, a talent with an unknown rank. His status window displayed that this talent had both a passive and an active skill. The passive skill granted him additional attribute points every time he killed an enemy using only physical attacks. The active skill allowed him to permanently raise any one of his 4 attributes: strength, defense, agility, or spirit to match his current highest attribute, but he could only use this once. Shocked, Xiao Yu reread the description to make sure he wasn't mistaken. This kind of ability, where he could earn attribute points just by killing with physical attacks, had never happened before. Usually, attribute points could only be earned through leveling up, so this was extremely rare. Xiao Yu realized that with this talent, he could gain unlimited attribute points as long as he could continue killing enemies physically. He thought hard about how to use his active skill. Since it could only be used once, he considered using it later when his strength reached 1,000 or even 1,000,000, so he could increase all his stats to that same level, making him the strongest necromancer with an army of powerful warriors. Because his passive skill required him to rely on physical attacks, Xiao Yu decided to allocate all his free 10 attribute points to strength. His current stats were Strength 20, Defense 6, Agility 9, Spirit 0. Now that Xiao Yu was done checking his status window, he had to register and complete his beginner task to officially obtain his profession. The system immediately teleported him to the location of the beginner task. In an instant, Xiao Yu arrived and saw a beautiful woman standing in front of a dungeon portal. She introduced herself as Elaine, his guide, and asked how she could help him. Xiao Yu was amazed by her beauty, even though she was just an NPC. He responded that he came to register and accept his beginner task. Upon hearing this, Elaine presented Xiao Yu with a starter gift to aid him in the dungeon: clothes, a weapon, and a summoning book that could call forth skeleton warriors typical for a necromancer. Xiao Yu thought the book and clothes were useless since he had 0 spirit power and thus couldn't summon skeletons. However, the weapon would help him fight physically. Xiao Yu asked Elaine about his beginner task, and she cheerfully explained that he only needed to escape the misty cave. She began to explain the rules, but before she could finish, Xiao Yu rushed inside. He didn't hear her warning. He must not kill the skeleton soldiers inside. He simply had to find the fastest way to escape. After Elaine finished explaining and opened her eyes, Xiao Yu was nowhere to be seen. The foolish Xiao Yu had rushed into the dungeon before she could finish speaking, so he didn't hear her full instructions. He only knew that he had to escape the misty cave. As Xiao Yu entered, he was greeted by a greenish area filled with corpses scattered all around. He turned around and wondered what Elaine had said that he missed. But Xiao Yu shrugged it off, thinking the beginner test would be easy anyway, so there was no need to pay attention to everything. While inspecting the corpses, an enemy suddenly appeared behind him, holding a weapon. Xiao Yu turned and saw a skeleton soldier charging toward him. Reacting quickly, Xiao Yu pulled out his weapon and met the skeleton head-on. With a powerful swing, he struck the skeleton soldier, instantly reducing its HP by 20 and killing it in a single blow. Xiao Yu was stunned by what had happened. Thankfully, the enemy was weak, and he managed to take it down quickly. Since Xiao Yu defeated the skeleton soldier using only physical strength, his passive skill activated, giving him 1 attribute point and 3 experience points, enough to level up. Additionally, he was granted a new rank passive skill for killing the first monster in just 1 strike. Xiao Yu checked the new skill, which was called Miracle of Might. It had the ability to double his strength attribute. He was ecstatic this skill perfectly complemented his original passive, which relied on high strength. As he was celebrating, skeletal hands suddenly burst out from the ground behind him, followed by more skeleton soldiers emerging. Sensing danger, Xiao Yu turned around and was shocked to see multiple skeletons charging at him. With no time to waste, Xiao Yu swung his weapon, and in a flash, all the skeletons were slain thanks to his high strength attribute. He gained 4 additional attribute points from killing the 4 skeletons, along with enough experience to level up once more. Xiao Yu now had 30 points in strength, 3 times stronger than even the most talented geniuses in history. He began to wonder if he was even supposed to be killing the skeletons. This was way too easy. While he was deep in thought, a new skeleton appeared behind him, but this one was different. It carried a shield to block attacks. This was a skeleton captain, a level 3 enemy. Xiao Yu noticed it had 15 strength, enough to kill him in just 2 hits. He had to act fast. Knowing that the skeleton captain moved slowly, Xiao Yu launched the first strike. His attack was blocked by the captain's shield, which then countered with a spear thrust. Fortunately, Xiaoyu dodged it easily thanks to the enemy's sluggish movements. He observed the enemy's tactic defend first, then strike, so he began thinking of a way to defeat it. When the skeleton captain attacked again, Xiaoyu spotted an opening in its defense. He targeted its midsection, causing it to lose balance and fall. This was his chance. With all his strength, he delivered a powerful downward strike. The blow dealt 50 damage, killing the skeleton captain instantly. Defeating the captain granted him 3 attribute points and a yellow core that dropped from its body. Xiaoyu couldn't believe how hard this beginner test was. He wondered how any regular student could survive such a challenge. He remembered their head teacher, Zhu Jinlong, saying that monsters sometimes dropped cores containing various rewards. He quickly opened the yellow core and received a D-grade item that gave his next attack a guaranteed critical hit, but it could only be used once, which left him disappointed. While examining the item, more skeleton soldiers began emerging from the ground behind him. Xiaoyu was stunned. It seemed like the enemies just kept increasing in number. The skeletons charged at him all at once, so Xiaoyu braced himself for the oncoming attacks. He advanced carefully, knowing he was only level 2 with just 20 HP. Getting hit could be fatal. From mid-air, he systematically wiped out the skeletons one by one until he cleared them all. Afterward, he gained enough experience to reach level 3. He immediately opened his status window to check his stats. His strength had now reached 46. Outside the academy, the other students had finished their beginner tests and were happily chatting about the professions they received. Some were getting impatient, noticing that everyone seemed to have returned except for one person. They joked that someone might have failed or even died to the slow-moving skeleton soldiers. One even laughed, saying they'd die of laughter if that were true. However, one of Xiaoyu's friends started to worry. He hadn't seen Xiaoyu since the test began and feared something might have gone wrong. Back inside the cave, Xiaoyu was still battling skeletons and wondering why the beginner test hadn't ended, despite killing so many enemies. Suddenly, he heard a furious voice echoing through the cave. Moments later, the entire cave shook as dozens of skulls began to rise from the ground. Xiaoyu looked behind him and saw skulls gathering in one location. From a dark corner of the cave, a green flame emerged and floated toward the pile of skulls, slowly forming a massive skeletal figure. It was a burning skeleton soldier that let out a terrifying roar. It was a level 10 monster with extremely high attributes. Xiaoyu's heart pounded. Standing before him was a dungeon boss known as the Skeleton King. He couldn't believe he was facing such a powerful monster, and he had no idea how he or any of the other students was supposed to defeat it. Alright friends, that's the end of the video. If you want to see the next part, make sure to subscribe to the channel if you haven't already. Also, I've made a special sleeping video for you all, and that's available on my second channel, so be sure to check that out too. Thanks for watching, and see you in the next one.
Summon up the dead, let them rise from the grave. Darkness in my veins, feel the world start to break. Shadows in my wake, hear the whispers call my name. Bow before the master, now you trapped in my domain. Yeah, I move like a phantom unseen in the mist. Scrolls in my hands, let the runes crack the crypt. Skulls in my path, got the void in my grip. Came back from the dead, now the world finna.
Not long after, the Skeleton King began preparing a powerful attack aimed at Xiaoyu. The Skeleton King finally unleashed his strike, but Xiaoyu managed to dodge it quickly due to the slow speed of the attack. Xiaoyu closely observed the flaming weapon used against him and was immensely grateful. It didn't hit him. If it had, it would have surely killed him. Xiaoyu analyzed his next move, aware that defeating the Skeleton King would be tough, especially with its 60 defense attribute that he wasn't sure he could break through. Without wasting time, Xiaoyu attacked its midsection, but his strike only dealt 32 damage, barely a scratch on the monster's 400 GP. Although the damage he could deal was low, Xiaoyu wasn't discouraged, knowing that if he kept landing hits, he might still defeat it. Xiaoyu launched multiple attacks at different parts of the Skeleton King's body, successfully landing 5 hits. This caused the Skeleton King to fall to the ground, temporarily down to 200 GP. At this point, Xiaoyu thought the Skeleton King might just be there to scare them. It seemed easier than expected. However, Xiaoyu's confidence quickly faded when he heard the Skeleton King speak. The Skeleton King declared that he had long served as the cave's guardian, and Xiaoyu was the first player to defeat his minions. He added that he never expected a mere newbie to challenge and even damage him, which made Xiaoyu a threat to all monsters. Therefore, Xiaoyu had to be eliminated immediately. Hearing this, Xiaoyu braced himself for what was to come, as the Skeleton King was now dead set on killing him. In an instant, the Skeleton King moved much faster than before, and Xiaoyu could sense it had become even stronger. Xiaoyu stayed alert. He knew that one hit could spell his death. The Skeleton King launched a powerful strike that Xiaoyu dodged again, but the impact shook the entire area and even caused the ground to rise. Xiaoyu realized he couldn't get too close anymore, as the Skeleton King's attacks had become faster and more dangerous. He needed to immobilize the boss before he could land a clean hit. Enraged, the Skeleton King charged at Xiaoyu, unleashing a lightning-infused aura as a preemptive strike. While watching the boss approach, Xiaoyu noticed a large boulder above that was about to fall, something he could use to his advantage. Xiaoyu ran toward the boulder, prompting the Skeleton King to follow. To lure it closer, Xiaoyu insulted it, calling it a fool. Infuriated, the Skeleton King attacked Xiaoyu with all its might. Xiaoyu tried to block the blow with his weapon, but he wasn't strong enough. The impact severely injured him, reducing his 30 GP to just 4. Xiaoyu was stunned. Just the impact alone had nearly killed him. The Skeleton King, seeing Xiaoyu off balance, prepared to strike again and finish him off. Weakened and afraid, Xiaoyu summoned all his strength and leapt away from the attack, causing the Skeleton King's strike to hit the large boulder instead. The already unstable boulder finally collapsed, sending massive chunks crashing down on the Skeleton King. The force of the impact dealt significant damage, and Xiaoyu had to run far away to avoid being caught in the shockwave. The Skeleton King was now pinned between the boulders and left with only 128 GP. Despite his fear, Xiaoyu knew he had to end this before the boss recovered, especially since his health was almost gone. He jumped high into the air, determined to finish the Skeleton King with one final blow. To strengthen the attack, Xiaoyu used the D rank item he received earlier, which guaranteed a critical hit for his next strike. He poured all his remaining strength into the attack, knowing this was his last chance to win. The once proud Skeleton King now looked terrified as Xiaoyu's attack approached, fully aware it could be fatal. But it was too late. Xiaoyu's blow landed with the power of a critical hit, slaying the boss instantly. The green flames returned to their origin, and the giant skull trapped under the rocks vanished. Soon after, Xiaoyu heard the system congratulating him for successfully completing the beginner task by slaying the Skeleton King. As a reward, he received 30 free attribute points for this rare achievement. In addition, he earned 10 more attribute points from his passive skill and 50 experience points for defeating the Skeleton King. Xiaoyu, who had just reached level 3, suddenly jumped to level 5, becoming the first newbie to ever kill the Skeleton King. And the rewards didn't stop there. Before he could leave, the Skeleton King's equipment materialized before him. As recognition of his bravery, Xiaoyu received a C rank item that increased the wearer's first attack by 50%. Though not the strongest item, Xiaoyu was pleased C rank gear was valuable and could be sold for a high price if he didn't want to keep it. What Zioyu didn't yet realize was that the path he chose to complete the beginner test was unlike anyone else's. And because of that, he was awarded the title of the first player to finish the trial by slaying the Skeleton King. Zioyu didn't think twice and immediately exited the portal to return to their school. Currently, Zioyu has 76 strength, 6 defense, 7 agility, 0 spirit, 200 mana, and 50 health. Moments later, Zioyu successfully emerged from the portal and was instantly spotted by his friend Xiangdi, who was overjoyed to see him return safely. Xiangdi asked why Zioyu took so long to finish the beginner task, admitting he thought Zioyu might have died inside. Zioyu was confused and asked if everyone else had completed the beginner task that quickly. Xiangdi explained that it had already been 3 hours since everyone else got out, except for him. Zioyu changed the subject and asked his friend what profession he received. Xiangdi excitedly shared that he had received the mage profession, filling him with happiness. As they talked, one of their classmates suddenly arrived and mocked Zioyu for being the last one out and keeping everyone waiting. The person who arrived was their class monitor, Mafe, who arrogantly said Zioyu had no talent and was only good-looking, a trait useless in their world, where talent was what truly mattered. Zioyu ignored him since Mafe had always liked to belittle him in everything. Soon after, their head instructor, Zhu Jinlong, spoke and congratulated everyone for returning safely, now officially becoming players in the other world. He announced that training would begin the following day. Before they start, Zhu Jinlong wanted everyone to introduce themselves and reveal their talents and professions. The students eagerly shared what professions they received. Some were delighted, while others were clearly disappointed with what they got. A beautiful girl named Zayu introduced herself next, revealing she was a mage healer, which impressed the rest of the class. Next was Zhao Yu, who received the profession of mid-shield and had a B-rank talent. Not to be outdone, class monitor Mafe seriously declared he had received the swordsman profession with a B-rank talent. The students were amazed by this, considering it a very high rank. Even their head instructor was impressed, considering B-rank talent a sign of genius. Then it was Zioyu's turn. He calmly stated that his profession was a necromancer. As he said this, a black aura enveloped his body. Regarding his talent rank, he said he couldn't share it yet, as he didn't even know what it was himself. The students were shocked. Necromancer was a hidden profession, one rarely seen across the entire world. Their head instructor was thrilled that their school now had another hidden profession student, especially a necromancer. Other students couldn't believe it. The necromancer class was notoriously strong, with stories of a necromancer who once destroyed an entire faction single-handedly. Mafe refused to believe Zioyu had a higher talent than him. He assumed Zioyu was just embarrassed because he had a low-ranked talent and was trying to hide it. He added that necromancers were weak since they only relied on their undead creatures and could easily be killed by assassins or swordsmen like him. Mafe looked at Zioyu smugly, thinking to himself that he was still better than Zioyu, even with his hidden profession. Meanwhile, many students admired Zioyu for staying humble despite gaining such a rare class. In Zioyu's mind, he knew he couldn't yet summon any undead, which is why he didn't feel proud. He feared being ridiculed once they found out. Their instructor, Zhu Jinlong, had high hopes for Zioyu, even though he didn't show it outwardly. After everyone finished sharing, Zhu Jinlong dismissed them and told them to meet at the training grounds the next day. Zioyu and his friend Xiangdi left along with the rest. Xiangdi showed his status window to Zioyu. All his attribute stats were just 1 point each. Zioyu told him that it didn't matter what profession they got, everything still depended on hard work and perseverance. In Zioyu's thoughts, he realized how far ahead he was compared to his friend, especially since he already had 76 points in strength alone. A while later, Zioyu returned home, the only memento left to him by his parents, who disappeared without a trace. He still vividly remembered the happy memories with his loving parents. But when he turned 6, his parents had to go to the capital, and they never returned. He was left alone and orphaned at a young age. 12 years had passed, but he still had no clue where they went. That's why he was determined to enter the capital school and uncover the truth about his parents. The next day came, and Zioyu was now attending an assembly where their instructor gave reminders before the training began. Zhu Jinlong warned them that if any part of the training seemed too dangerous, they shouldn't force it. Their lives were more important than a practice they could always redo later. The students were surprised by the instructor's statement. It hinted that even the first training could still pose a threat to their lives. Zhu Jinlong saw the change in their expressions and reassured them that the first training wouldn't be that hard, but he needed to warn them in case of unforeseen situations. He reminded them of the time during a past training where 4 top students mysteriously vanished while inside the beginner world called Nightmare Village. Since then, no one had been able to determine exactly what caused their disappearance. The students grew even more nervous after hearing the story, their faces filled with doubt. To lighten the mood, Zhu Jinlong smiled and said training would begin in 10 seconds. He ordered everyone to prepare, as the otherworld portal would open once the countdown ended. Moments later, Zioyu was surrounded by black lightning and teleported to a new location he had never seen before. The other students were slightly surprised by the event, but Zioyu remained calm. As he scanned his surroundings, Maffei was already gathering students to form a team and finish the training together. Inside a dark, ominous house, a mysterious, unidentified figure's feet could be seen sticking out. Alright friends, that's the end of the video. If you want to see the next part, make sure to subscribe to the channel if you haven't already. Also, I've made a special sleeping video for you all, and that's available on my second channel, so be sure to check that out too. Thanks for watching, and see you in the next one.
I control death, yeah, the reaper my kin. Blood moon glow, let the ritual begin. One last breath, now your fate locked in. Step into the void, let the madness win.
After a short while, they began walking around the area, led by Maffei, their class monitor. As they walked, Maffei was thinking to himself that he alone deserved to be the leader of the group, rather than Zioyu, even if he had received the hidden profession of a necromancer. He added that he would prove to everyone that he was an excellent leader and the strongest in the entire class. While everyone was busy walking, Zioyu couldn't help but feel puzzled about the situation. If this really was the beginner's world, they should have received a system message by now. However, despite arriving here some time ago, none of them had gotten anything. Suddenly, as they continued walking, a being appeared behind them, startling everyone when it spoke. When they turned to look, they saw an old man with a purple complexion who expressed his regret for the new travelers, lamenting that they were all still so young. Some students immediately prepared for battle, wondering if the old man was simply an NPC. Zioyu stepped forward and asked the old man what he meant by feeling regret for them. The old man, his face serious, replied and welcomed them all to Nightmare Village. As soon as the old man mentioned Nightmare Village, the sky darkened and powerful purple lightning bolts struck the ground, making the atmosphere tense and alerting the students to the danger. Moments later, the system message that Zioyu had been waiting for finally appeared, confirming that they had entered the beginner's training of Nightmare Village, a place with an S-rank difficulty level. Everyone received a message from the system detailing that the training they were about to undergo was equivalent to an E-rank quest in the normal world. Additionally, the system explained that their goal was to safely escape the village by finding the secret exit hidden somewhere within. When they realized that their training ground was none other than the dreaded Nightmare Village, terror filled their hearts. They remembered the story told by their head instructor that this was the place where 40 students had previously vanished without a trace. Overwhelmed with fear, some of the students broke into a run, desperate to go home and abandon the training before they, too, disappeared. Maffei tried to stop them, promising that if they just followed his lead, he would ensure their survival and help them escape the nightmare village. Even Zioyu was beginning to doubt whether they could really survive this ordeal. To succeed in an E-rank quest in the normal world, players needed to have at least reached the early stage, but currently, all of them were still stuck at the disciple stage. In their world, the power levels were divided into 6 stages: disciple, early stage, middle stage, late stage, king, and godly. The disciple stage covered levels 1 to 10, and they needed to reach level 11 to advance to the early stage. Those foolish enough to attempt escaping found themselves trapped suddenly. Invisible barriers materialized around the village, preventing them from leaving. They were shocked and confused, wondering when the barriers had been put up since they hadn't noticed anything earlier. The old man calmly explained that once someone entered Nightmare Village, they could not leave until they completed the mission. Escape was futile. Hearing this, many students began to panic, convinced that they were all going to die. Maffei once again tried to calm everyone, urging them to trust his leadership so they could make it out alive. At that moment, Zioyu understood why the 40 students before them had never returned the barriers trapped them just like they were trapped now. He recalled the mission rules. They must find the hidden exit to escape Nightmare Village. He also suspected that the mysterious old man wasn't necessarily their enemy, so there was no need to antagonize him, at least not yet. The old man walked ahead of them and said they shouldn't worry because they could live comfortably inside the village. The arrogant Maffei pretended to understand and asked if he meant that they should stay calm while facing the Nightmare Village mission. The old man, however, shook his head and said with a grim tone that since they were already here, they should accept that they would rot in this place for the rest of their lives. Silence fell over the group. Everyone was stunned, processing the horror of what they had just heard. Then, the old man introduced himself as Wogan, the village head. He said he only had 2 rules for those who wished to stay. First, they could live in any vacant house in Nightmare Village, but under no circumstances were they allowed to touch the black stones placed at the doors. Second, they must be inside their houses before nightfall, with all doors and windows tightly shut and locked, and they must never open them, no matter what happens. Zioyu, who had been quietly observing, asked Wogan why they couldn't go outside at night. Wogan refused to answer directly, only saying that they would understand once night came. Sure enough, night soon fell. Following Wogan's advice, the students divided themselves into 4 groups, each group consisting of 11 members, to avoid overcrowding. After organizing themselves, they immediately entered their assigned houses and locked the doors behind them, just as Wogan instructed. Inside one of the houses, a female student suggested they all stay on the 2nd floor to ensure safety while sleeping. A girl known to be one of the most beautiful in class approached Zioyu, asking him to protect her in case danger arose. She flirted with him, winking and emphasizing that she was a healer, someone who could revive him if he ever fell, implying he should prioritize saving her if needed. Zuoyu, who witnessed the flirting, immediately scolded the girl, telling her to stop being shameless in front of everyone. The 2 girls started arguing. The flirty girl, Zhao Ziyu, snapped back, saying it was her body, and she could do whatever she wanted. Zuoyu retorted sharply, claiming that having a large chest didn't give Zhao Ziyu the right to act arrogantly. Zhao Ziyu fired back, mocking Zuoyu for being flat-chested. Enraged, Zuoyu shot back, saying that Zhao Ziyu was just fat, which was why she looked busty. As the argument heated up, they suddenly noticed a foolish student approaching a window, as if drawn to something. The student placed his hand on the window pane, tears falling from his eyes as he muttered about wanting to see his grandmother again. Outside the window, they could see a ghostly old woman, telling the student that she was cold and needed to come inside to hug her beloved grandson once more. The student did not hesitate to open the window for what he thought was his grandmother. but in reality, it was just a stray spirit trying to deceive him. Zuo Yu shouted that what the student was seeing was not his grandmother, and that he needed to stop. But it was too late. The foolish student had already opened the window. Moments later, the old spirit's eyes and expression suddenly changed, and it quickly lunged at the foolish student. The fight between the two girls momentarily stopped, as they immediately grew serious upon seeing their companion being attacked by the stray spirit. One of the students quickly acted, pulling out their weapon and using magic to temporarily imprison the spirit. The student who used the magic was Xiangdai, a friend of Xiaoyu and a magic user. He ordered the foolish student to run immediately, because he couldn't hold the Koluluha for long. The student quickly obeyed and ran toward them while the spirit transformed into a red monster. Soon after, the monster broke free from its imprisonment, and its name, Nightmare Monster, appeared. It was revealed to have a strength of level 3. Upon seeing how strong their opponent was, the students were filled with fear, as many of them were only still at level 1, 2 levels below the Nightmare Monster. Since Xiangdai was the reason the student was able to escape, the monster immediately charged at him in retaliation. Xiangdi grew slightly nervous because the monster was too fast for him to match with his slow casting magic spells. Before the monster's attack could land, Zuo Yu blocked it with her yellow barrier. However, even while blocking, Zuo Yu's health was being reduced by tens each time she defended against the monster's attacks. Zuo Yu urgently asked Xiangdai to cast a healing spell on her to restore her health and ordered Xiaoyu to summon his undead creatures to fight the monster. The two quickly agreed upon hearing Zuo Yu's request. Xiangdi swiftly cast his healing magic, creating a large yellow and green aura around Zuo Yu, restoring her health back to normal. Zuo Yu thought to herself that if they worked together, even if they were outmatched in levels, they could still win, especially with Xiaoyu, a necromancer, on their side who could summon undead creatures to fight for them. However, to Zuo Yu's surprise, instead of summoning undead, Xiaoyu charged toward the monster with his weapon drawn. Xiangdi shouted, warning that a necromancer should not fight up close because they were too weak in physical combat. He urged Xiaoyu to summon undead instead, letting them handle the battle. But Xiaoyu ignored them and continued his charge. With just a single strike, Xiaoyu killed the nightmare monster instantly. Everyone who witnessed it was stunned, as it wasn't something that could normally be done, especially not by a necromancer, a class known for weak physical attacks. They were even more bewildered because the nightmare monster had around 50 health points, and normally, even a warrior or swordsman wouldn't be able to kill it in one blow. Soon after, the slain nightmare monster disappeared and turned into a blackstone identical to the blackstone on the forbidden door that the village head warned them not to touch. Upon examining it, they realized that it had the same symbol as the one on the forbidden door, making them even more curious about what was happening. While everyone was puzzling over the blackstone, Xiaoyu himself wondered why he didn't receive any stat points despite killing the nightmare monster using only his physical abilities. A big question formed in his mind: could this be a bug in the system? Noticing that Xiaoyu was deep in thought, Zuo Yu immediately asked if he had discovered anything about the nightmare monster. Xiaoyu answered that he hadn't found anything, and that maybe it was just his imagination. After a long night, morning came, and the students were finally allowed outside again. The students were all discussing the recent events of the nightmare monster attacking them, realizing that not only Xiaoyu's group experienced such encounters, but others did as well. Members of Xiaoyu's group began spreading stories of how lucky they were to be in the same group because of Xiaoyu's incredible strength being able to kill a nightmare monster in a single blow. They also praised their other companions like Zuo Yu and Zai Yu for being dependable. Meanwhile, the foolish Maffei thought to himself that if he had been there, he wouldn't have let the girls do the fighting, because in his mind, it would hurt his masculinity. Maffei drew his weapon and swung it around like a fool, imagining how cool he must look as a swordsman. Xiaoyu and his companions saw this and greeted him warmly, praising their class monitor for being so diligent and starting his training early in the morning. Hearing this, Mafe felt a little embarrassed and immediately stopped what he was doing to try and appear cooler in front of his classmates. The foolish Mafe then spotted Zioyu and immediately tried to flirt with him, saying he should join his group instead since he could guarantee his safety without him needing to fight. Zioyu responded by politely declining Mafe's offer, saying he preferred to team up with someone else. Undeterred, Mafe continued to insist and boasted to Zioyu that he could do everything he could as well, but Zioyu firmly rejected him, making it clear he wasn't interested. While everyone was busy talking, they suddenly heard a furious shout coming from the village head. Zioyu immediately turned to look. Moments later, many figures resembling the village head appeared, armed and enraged at the group of students who had arrived the day before. The village head's group wanted to execute and burn the students alive, blaming them for a terrible crime. The village head added that anyone who dared resist should be killed immediately. Confused, Mafe quickly asked the village head what was happening and why there was such chaos so early in the morning. The village head coldly replied that there was no use pretending to be innocent because the students knew what they had done wrong last night and must now be punished. Zioyu carefully observed the village head's group and noticed that they were all about the same number and age as the students themselves. Mafe asked again if the village head was referring to the nightmare monster they had killed the night before. Enraged, the village head answered that what they had killed were the protector spirits of the village, not monsters. He added that the students had broken the rules he had given the previous night, and the protector spirits had only wanted to punish them, not attack them outright. Because of their violation, even the village elders would now suffer, so the students had to be punished immediately to appease the spirits. Fearfully, Mafe pleaded if there was any way they could calm the protector spirits and avoid the punishment. The village head answered seriously that there was a way. One student had to volunteer to be tied up alone in the center of the village for the entire night, to bear the punishment on behalf of everyone. He asked who among them was brave enough to make such a sacrifice. Mafe immediately thought to himself that no one would want to do something so dangerous, knowing it could easily lead to death. However, to everyone's surprise, Zioyu suddenly spoke up, telling them to stop arguing because he would be the one to do it. He added that since he was the one who killed the nightmare monster, he should be the one to take responsibility and be tied up. Mafe was shocked and immediately scolded Zioyu, thinking he was just trying to show off and act brave. He even tried to persuade the village head to ignore Zioyu's reckless words, insisting that he didn't understand the danger and was only acting out of pride. But Zioyu calmly told Mafe to quiet down, saying he had a reason for doing this. He suspected that this might actually be the key to escaping the nightmare village. Since Zioyu was firm in his decision, they had no choice but to follow through. Even though it wasn't nighttime yet, the village head proceeded to tie him up early before leaving with his group, leaving Zioyu alone while his classmates watched anxiously. After the village head's group left, the others hurriedly asked Zioyu what he meant about finding a way to escape the nightmare village. They also asked if he had discovered a secret passage back to the real world. Zioyu answered that he wasn't sure yet, but his instincts told him that he was on the right track and that he needed to test it that very night. Soon, night fell. Thick mist began to rise around them as Zioyu remained tied up in the center of the village. Moments later, from atop the rooftops, the nightmare monster regarded as the protector spirit by the village head began to crawl toward him. Its gaze was fierce and terrifying, as if it intended to devour him whole. A creature with large claws charged arrogantly toward Kyo-yu. Sensing that the nightmare was finally approaching to attack him, Kyo-yu began planning his. But suddenly, a massive amount of sand erupted from the ground and tightened around the nightmare, trapping it. This attack was none other than a sand-binding spell cast by Kyo-yu's friend, Xiangdi. Xiangdi stood holding a wand, controlling the sand and restraining the nightmare as he told Faye, the class monitor, to act quickly because he could only hold it for a few seconds. As Ma-Fei dashed toward the nightmare, he reassured Xiangdi, saying he would protect all the students. As a loyal warrior, he believed he could defeat all his enemies in the world with a single stab. But his confidence was shattered when he attacked the nightmare and it broke free from the sand binding. It counterattacked Ma-Fei in anger, but he managed to block it using his skill, Payback. Though he successfully defended himself, he was hurt emotionally upon realizing that Kaio Yu had easily killed such a monster despite being just a simple healer. He couldn't believe that Kaio Yu could do something he himself could not. He readied his payback skill again and slashed the nightmare with a strike intended to break its defenses. But it was ineffective, dealing only 5 points of damage. The healer and the girl with a shield approached Kaio Yu while he was down near the pillar. Kaio Yu asked the two girls why they were still outside the house. They replied that they were scared to leave him alone at night, so they came out to help. Zhao Ziyueyu told Kaio Yu that they needed Ma-Fei to destroy the chains with his payback skill, but that wasn't possible because he was busy dealing with the nightmare. Kaio Yu cried and asked the two girls for help with a small task that didn't require payback. He quickly freed himself from the binding with a few gestures and shattered the chains. The girls were shocked and doubted whether Kaio Yu was really just a necromancer. In the next scene, the class monitor was still struggling in his fight with the nightmare. As Zhao Ziyueyu and Zhao Ziyu approached to help Ma-Fei, Zhao Ziyu the healer prepared to heal him. But Ma-Fei stubbornly refused, insisting that real heroes are made through battle and that scars are marks of honor. Understanding his stubbornness, the girls decided not to heal him. Ma-Fei attempted to strike the nightmare's head, as in a previous battle where Kaio Yu had killed a nightmare with a single stab to the head. The class monitor was thrilled to hear this, but disappointed in himself for not thinking of the idea. Even after Kaio Yu had warned him that the head wasn't necessarily the weak point. The class monitor refused to listen to Kaio Yu's warning, thinking that he was just afraid that Fei might surpass him. He boasted about his next attack, confident that it would be impressive. He struck the nightmare with a powerful slash and dashed to its opposite side. But when he turned around, he was shocked to see the nightmare still alive. It had 35 GP left, while the class monitor only had 15. Worried, he asked about the nightmare's weak spot and couldn't understand why it died with one stab from Kaio Yu but not from him. The girl insisted that the issue wasn't the nightmare, but the person fighting it, claiming that the class monitor wasn't as good as Kaio Yu. This deeply wounded the class monitor's confidence. His friends called out to him to be careful, warning that another hit would surely kill him. But we then saw the madness of the class monitor as he ignored them all. He strengthened his grip on his sword, ready for another defense-breaking strike as the nightmare rose again. He dodged its attack and struck it harder than before, dealing 30 damage. As the nightmare fell, the class monitor saw his chance to prove himself. But suddenly, a magical staff came flying from nowhere and killed the nightmare with just 5 damage. The monitor was stunned. He couldn't believe that his victory had been stolen by none other than Kaio Yu. Kaio Yu praised the class monitor, telling him he had done well. But the monitor was furious at Kaio Yu for stealing his glory. He screamed at everyone, accusing him of selling out the nightmare, saying Kaio Yu stole his fame. Xiangdi tried to control Fei, telling him to stop his childish tantrum. Meanwhile, Kaio Yu held the black stone dropped by the nightmare, pondering why he still hadn't received a prompt or extra attribute points from killing it. Suddenly, 2 more nightmares came running toward the students with the intent to attack. Xiangdi warned them that another nightmare was on the way. Now confused, Xiangdi asked Kaio Yu what they should do. Finally, Kaio Yu spoke, telling them to hide inside the house since there was no longer any reason to fight the nightmares. Having already figured out what the students needed to do before the nightmares arrived, they quickly went inside and shut the door tightly behind them. Zuo Yu asked Kaio Yu how they could pass the trial. But he kept the suspense, saying all would be revealed tomorrow. And the key was to listen to Kaio Yu when he spoke. The next day, the village head was furious. He was angry with Kaio Yu, saying that even after giving him a chance to change, he still deceived the villagers and released another protector spirit. The village head declared that he would no longer allow any student to destroy Nightmare Village. He said they should all die, but was interrupted by Kaio Yu, who asked him a strange question. He asked if the villagers were truly original residents of Nightmare Village. The village head became even angrier, calling the question ridiculous and asserting that the villagers had lived there for generations. Kaio Yu became serious and declared that none of the villagers were originally from Nightmare Village. He revealed that all 40 villagers were part of a class that had been wiped out during a trial in the village. He said they had been trapped in the fantasy realm ever since they entered and had no way to return to the real world. The villagers were shocked to hear this. The village head laughed and accused Kaio Yu of making up stories because he was afraid to die. But Kaio Yu assured them that everything he said was based on solid evidence. He pulled out a black stone from his bag, the same stone hanging from the doors in Nightmare Village. Upon seeing the stone, the village head ran toward Kaio Yu in rage, screaming that they should all die 10,000 times for transferring the protector stone from its place. But Kaio Yu wasn't the only one who removed a stone. His 4 friends also pulled out black stones from their bags. The village head was stunned and explained that the protector stones were high-level holy items that defended them from nighttime attacks. Anyone who tried to tamper with them would be personally punished by the lord of the village. But Kaio Yu interrupted again, saying there had never been any real protector stones. The entire fantasy realm of Nightmare Village was formed by the black stones and the mysterious symbols on them. As long as someone shattered those stones, the illusion would collapse and everyone trapped inside would be freed. He instructed his 4 friends to break their black stones, and they threw them to the ground, shattering them into many pieces. As the stones broke, glowing symbols appeared above the villagers' heads and floated toward the sky. As the glyphs grew, the villagers began to remember their pasts. They were once students from the same school, hoping to enter the best university after their beginner trial. But when they entered Nightmare Village, monsters attacked, and something terrible happened to them. They became the residents of Nightmare Village, and the man who had tried to protect them became the village head. In the next scene, a man with white hair remembered that he was the class monitor. He had tried to protect his classmates from the calamity, but it was too late, and he too became a villager. A notification appeared, saying that one player had discovered the secret at the core of Nightmare Village and successfully freed its residents. The mission was a success, and the rewards would be distributed based on individual ratings. As they teleported back to their own worlds, everyone was happy to have passed the trial. Fei, Zhangdi Zuo Yu, and Zhao Ziyu were glad that Kaio Yu had found the solution and helped the M all escape the village. Fei even congratulated Kaio Yu, saying he was smarter than expected for once. He asked Kaio Yu how he figured out how to pass the trial. But Kaio Yu told them to keep their thoughts to themselves for now and that they'd talk about it once they returned to the real world. As time passed and other students were transported back, the 5 friends remained in Nightmare Village. Zuo Yu asked if they had failed the trial. But suddenly, a notification popped up, congratulating the 5 players who shattered the black stones of Nightmare. They were given a new mission, to collect the hearts of the nightmares. But this time, the mission's difficulty was ranked. How could mere students handle such a high-ranked quest?